photo
for
from
the
1964
recognition of
yearbook.
the naming of the
That was a few years ago. Last
yeah,
year.
1964 and 65 laboratory here in the James Guy wing of the West Lafayette High School. Just a little bit of background. When the building was under construction, some of the staff and board members from the West Lafayette School Corporation approached some of us and about the idea of our classes contributing to the construction of the building and with potential naming opportunities. I agreed to lead the charge for the class of 1965. In the steps that were available for naming was minimum was $25,000. You could name an office of some sort. $50,000 you could name a laboratory, and so forth. We raised between $25,000 and $50,000. So when the building was completed, and I got back in contact with the school corporation and Wendy in particular to discuss this, and what the school and the high school came back with was the concept of pooling our contributions with the contributions of the class of 1964, the class in front of us, and that would be sufficient to name a laboratory. And that seemed like an excellent idea for a couple of reasons. First of all, some of us that donated were actually in the class of 65, but graduated in the class of 64. And so pooling the contributions was made a lot of sense from that point of view. And the other thing is the lab that was proposed for naming was this lab here, which in its previous configuration was the chemistry lab that many of us learned chemistry from Mr. Guy here. So that really seemed very appropriate, and I'm very happy about that. Many of us have fond memories of our education here at Westside. One of the things that I think many of us recognize is the impact of Purdue University on this high school. That is, many of the students in Westside, and this continues to this day, are kids of either staff or faculty here at Purdue. And what that did was that led to a strong emphasis on academics at Westside. And there was a group of bright, motivated students that were here at the high school. I must tell you, my competition at Westside was the toughest academic competition I had compared to college and to graduate school. So this was really a unique group here. And the high school was a great steward of this. Okay, they identified, and we can see this in the national rankings that Westside now has today. Now that they have these kinds of rankings, and I'm sure we would have had equivalent rankings back when we were in school. And really key to the success of Westside is the teachers. The teachers were the ones who really took those 15 to 17-year-old minds and really put them to work. And so we're very happy to recognize that we had outstanding teachers, and Mr. Guy was exemplified those teachers. So we're very delighted to be able to name the class of 64 and 65 laboratory in the James Guy wing. That's what I'm going to say, and I want to turn it over now to a couple of people who are closer to chemistry, and we'll talk about Mr. Guy's influence there. And Phil Lau first, who is a distinguished professor here at Purdue and has had I would say, fabled career.
I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to celebrate the career of Jim Guy. I feel very guilty about my past. I really benefited enormously from Jim's classes. I wasn't a very good student, but I think he'll attest to that. The reason why I actually got a B average in his class was because my father told me I couldn't play basketball unless I got a B average. I've regretted the fact that I haven't stopped by and thanked you personally, but I appreciate the opportunity to do so now. You know, as I've thought about how I've benefited from Jim's service to the community here, I've realized that, like many of you, the impact of Jim on my life has been very, very far-reaching. He doesn't know about this, but there was one study that we did in his class. It was in the second year advanced chemistry class, where Mr. Guy gave us the opportunity to design an experiment ourselves. And you know, I knew nothing about what the heck I was doing. But I designed an experiment where I decided to measure the heat of the reaction of sodium and bromine. And that was a fatal flaw, just but so I dissolved, I can't remember who my partner was. I thought it might have been Hunt, but he says no, it wasn't. Okay. I and somebody else dissolved bromine in some water. We measured the amount of water, and because the heat capacity of water is well known, we put a thermometer and we could tell how much heat was released by looking at the elevation and the temperature of the water. Pretty simple little experiment. Then we were, after dissolving the bromine in, we added the sodium metal. And as Jim well knows, when you add sodium metal to water, it creates a very violent reaction. It started bouncing across the top of the water, and then it burst into flames, and it melted the whole retort of flask. And the thermometer, I just watched it kind of sag into a pile of molten glass. But, you know, it was that.
Sounds like an A+.
That was probably very generous of Jim. But it was later, you know, when my dad was asking me what I wanted to major in, it was the memory of that class and the activities that we had there, and the opportunity. I mean, he was a teacher who would tell you where to look but not what to see, you know, and that was really important. Is that, and so, you know, I saw in that reaction there the fact that realized there was a lot unknown in chemistry, and that would be a fun place to spend my life. And so, and it took a number of subsequent decisions too. I went to BYU on a basketball scholarship, believe it or not. And after my freshman year, I didn't realize this at the time, but there was the only class for chemistry majors in sophomore level organic chemistry was at exactly the same time at the basketball team practice. There was no way to do both, and so I had to make a choice. And it was, again, the influence of my undergraduate chemistry. I really enjoyed Jim's classes immensely, even though I didn't do well in them. That made me choose chemistry. That, plus the fact I knew there was never a future in basketball for me. And, you know, so as I thought about that, you know, it has had an impact, enormous impact on my life. But then I think also it's fair to say that probably indirectly through that, it's had an impact on a lot of other lives. Jim, I've had 85 PhDs graduate from my lab at Purdue. Many have gone on as professors. I've got students who are professors at Yale, Ohio State, Purdue, Washington University in St. Louis, Emory, Dartmouth College, medical school there, all over the country, actually. And so, you know, there's that old saying, I think, that, how's it go? You can count the seeds in an apple, but you can't count the apples in a seed, right? And I think when you think about the impact that Jim has had on this community and our lives and so forth, it's very clear you can't count the apples in the seed. I don't know, you know, how many people, you know, each of these students of mine have influenced, but I'm sure it's been quite significant. And I will say, I don't say this in any any arrogance or anything, but I think just our work has had some broad-reaching impact. I think we have the best therapy for malaria. We're working on, we've already got it down so that we can cure even the most severe cases where they'll have over 1 million parasites per milliliter of blood in 48 hours. And we're, the tests that we're running in Tanzania and Kenya and Southeast Asia and so forth, I think are going to demonstrate. We don't know this, we have to finish the trial, but we should be able to do it in 24 hours. So that will be quite significant. There are still 620,000 deaths per year due to malaria, so I think we can have an impact there. I think we have the best therapy for prostate cancer now, this Pluvicto, that and by the way, I found out last night that Tim Harden, was on it and responded very well to it. It's just came out a year and a half ago, and they can't keep up with the supply. They're actually building a large plant in Indianapolis just to make our drug. The Novartis is. So, and we've got several other drugs that are out, I think, and others that are moving forward in areas everywhere from a number of other cancers to sickle cell disease and some autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, and ulcerative colitis, and so forth. So the impact spreads, I guess. And then the other thing I wanted to point out was just in our own class here. We asked last night, we were playing a number of games at our place last night, and how many of you had, at some time during your life, had a formal role as a teacher, was taught in public school or college and so forth? And a good fraction of those raised their hands. They go, Katie and Alice and Judy, okay, there we go, Han, myself, that's right, now Lou and Malcolm and so forth, and Jay, right?
Well,
Yeah, you
a
taught.
couple of months.
I mean, it was a good fraction of those present, and
Is Ann here? She
Yeah,
taught
yes,
for,
yeah.
taught science
Taught
for,
for
so
40 years.
yeah.
so they say, what is it that a teacher, the fire that a teacher lights in a student's life never goes out, and that the fingerprints he leaves behind never fade. I think, that's had the impact that Jim has had here. It's been remarkable. You've inspired so many people. And I think you've changed so many lives. You've got to be very comfortable with how you've spent your time on the planet. So anyway, I guess on behalf of all of us here, I'd like to express our gratitude to you for the contributions you've made to our careers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next person that would like to say something is actually not from our class, but he's from the class of 1963. Is Dave Kelso. I think many of us know the Kelso brothers from our high school days. And Dave is now a professor at Northwestern University, working in the general area of cancer research, biochemistry, and so forth. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, my parents weren't on the Purdue faculty. He was a home builder and a football player, and so my life at Westside was all around football at the time. Until I got you in your rookie year, and it was just starting, and Mr. Guy had the coolest classroom in all of Westside High School, because next to all the desks where we had to sit were the benches, and you got to get out of your desk and go to the benches and start fires and do work. And it was the first time in my entire school career that I saw any use for all that stuff we were memorizing. And he paid, and I found I can still remember, it's really interesting how we remember the failures, we remember the disasters. As I was coming down, I remember my disaster and my big failure. And I had found a line in the chemistry book that said H2 plus Cl2 goes to 2HCl. And then over the arrow, there was a little light bulb or a sunshine or something. And I said, well, what does this mean? And he said, well, that means that the light catalyzes the reaction. He said, how does that work? And you said, let's see. And within, I don't know how long it took, but suddenly, but there appeared in the chemistry lab a cylinder of hydrogen gas and a cylinder of chlorine gas. Now, there would have been no reason that stuff would have been around. And he kind of figured out how to bubble the two things and get the gases into this. And then, well, how do I light it? What light do we use? And he handed me this magnesium strip and said, just light this. And then the best advice in the whole experiment was, you better, and we were in this hood, and everything was all ready to go, and I had the magnesium strip. He said, you better duck down. and so the experiment was actually conducted like this. And as soon as that light got above the edge of the hood, it just was a gigantic explosion, and glass and water and everything.
You're still here.
And this was my after-school little project. It was, and I remember that one. And I also remembered that light's pretty powerful stuff and can behave in all kinds of unusual ways. And for me, years later, I became an engineer and built stuff that performed chemistry. My robots did the chemistry. My instruments did the chemistry, not me. But started doing fluorescence, and fluorescence is when light hits a molecule, and the molecule changes the light around and lets it back out at a different wavelength, and it's really, really powerful stuff. And that propelled me ahead, and I understood how that worked, and it was interesting to me, and I eventually found things. But you knew your students. You knew I wasn't going to be a football player, and that I was wired differently than my dad, and that curiosity is something to be explored and to be able to figure out at the bench how this stuff works. And I really do, that made my life the way it was, and I'm sure, like has been said, you affected many, many lives the same way. You're still Mr. Guy, who had the magic lab at the, it wasn't here, it was around the corner there somewhere. But thank you. We really appreciate it, and thank you for all the care and the education that you've given me and the hundreds of students who come after me. Really appreciate it.
Now Malcolm Kottler, our class of '65 valedictorian, is going to read a message or two also.
I do not have a great career in chemistry like either Phil or Dave to talk about. But I am here on behalf of someone else, a West Lafayette High School graduate, who has had a great career in chemistry. And in fact, just a couple weeks ago, he received the Nobel Prize in chemistry. I'm going to read to you a statement that Munji Bawendi sent me a few days ago about Mr. Guy. Everything I say is what he said. I am thrilled that Jim Guy's contribution to West Lafayette High School and to the education of countless of his students is being memorialized today with the naming of this lab in the new wing of the school. Mr. Guy, as we called him, was extraordinarily influential in shaping my, early interest in chemistry. His class, in retrospect, was the initial spark that led to my career. The impact that teachers like Jim Guy have in our society is not recognized enough. This ceremony is one small way to correct this. Unquote. Since we've had two great explosion stories, I'm not going to tell a third that did involve me, but mainly my lab partner, Peter Wallen, with nitrogen triiodide that it's fun to play with. And Jim was there to watch it and laugh. Peter was the only one who wasn't laughing because he was the victim with the stuff all over him and every movement he made, pop, 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 pop. And I know a number of you actually remember that because we've talked about it before. But I don't need to read it, just to remind you that another explosion in Mr. Guy's chemistry class with art.
We do other things in chemistry than explode.
I don't want to put you on the spot. If you, Mr. Guy, if you would like to say something, we would welcome it.
If I can get up. Okay. First, with respect to Mr. Kelso, the thing I remember most vividly wasn't chemistry. He was involved in setting up the junior class prom. Do you remember that? Oh, yes. Previously, as I understand it, it was a setup that most of the girls did. And David was one along with the lawyer from Fowler.
Okay. Jacobs.
Jacobs, yeah. They came to my house one night and said, "We don't like that. We want to do something else." So I said, "Fine." Got permission from the boss to do it. So every Saturday morning, the group would come over, take what they had built before, which was on the rafters or not, the building corners, bring them down, construct, put it away until the next week. And that started a trend in which every prom for a long time thereafter was based on building things for boys to do. And I remember that. When I graduated from Purdue with a bachelor's degree, I had a decision to make. I could start the PhD, which would have been in biochemistry. I could have done some teaching, or I could have gone into business, into a chemical factory. I had worked for 3 summers at Van Still Metallurgical in North Chicago, and I spent my senior second semester teaching laboratory chemistry 116 for engineers on Saturday morning from 8 until 11. And those two things caused me to do some thinking. I had a recruiter come down, buy me dinner, and would offer a job. And I said, I think I want to try teaching. He said, go ahead, you won't last a year. He said, teaching is boring. And I said, well, I'll try it anyway. And to say today to him, I would say, it may be true that a high school chemistry class would concentrate on the same fundamentals today as they did then. There are atoms and molecules and ions and all kinds of things. There are chemical reactions, as you all know now. There are endothermic reactions, etc. So it is true in one sense that the recruiter was right. That I would say the same things over again year after year. But what was different and what made teaching exciting was you all. because it's the difference of individuals that made teaching fun. Chemistry was a way to get to the education of kids. Any subject would have worked. Chemistry happened to be my happiness. But it was the way that kids reacted to me, to one another, and to the school that made all the difference in the world, that made it exciting. So I thank you all very much.
I just want to add one Jim Guy story. It does not involve me in chemistry, because my folks bought me a chemistry set when I was, I think, in 6th grade. And all I managed to do, nobody told me this stuff. I did it on my own because being male, I never read any directions. I blew up all my test tubes. And so that was the end of my chemistry career. But I do want to, since I was in the class of '64, Bob Williamson has relayed this story. And you came by the Williamson Family Library, which is part of the James R. Guy wing. And Bob said that when he was at IU, I think it was organic chemistry. Anyway, they had to solve the unknown. And so the professor gave them this, and Bob went in then with the answer either at the next, or I think they had 2 weeks to do this. And after 1 or 2 class periods, Bob went up with the answer, and the professor right away said, "Who did this for you?" And Bob said, "Well, I did." He said, "You couldn't have solved this quickly." He said, "Where did you go to school?" And Bob said, "Well, I went to West Lafayette." "Well, who was your teacher?" "Mr. Guy." "Oh, okay, you're good." So that has nothing to do with me, everything to do with him and Bob Williams.
Would anybody else?
Yeah, I wanted to say, I'm Wendy Ayler, I'm the director of the West Lafayette Schools Education Foundation, and I wanted to say thank you to you all for making this your gift to the school, to the project. That happened before my time with the foundation. I started after all the fundraising was done, but I feel I'm getting the better end because I get to be here for the dedication and to hear all your wonderful stories. This is fantastic. So thank you so much for reinvesting back into your school all these years later. I worked at Purdue before coming over here, and we, in alumni relations, and we had an alum from Taiwan who helped us to sponsor a class for a few years on lessons learned from failure. And we would bring alumni back to tell us, what did they learn from the times they failed, because he felt he learned more from that than he did from his successes, because those failures led to his successes. And so I was reminded of that hearing some of your stories today, what you can learn from times when you think all is lost, but look what came from it later on. So I just want to say thank you. Alumni really tell the story of the successes and where you've come from, and you all tell such a great story about West Lafayette High School, and we really appreciate that. And just thank you all. I'm so glad to be able to be here and hear your stories today.
Thank you.